Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective, back here with Mr. Austin Taylor. Another episode of Talking Boys. Another week where we're on here after a loss. I didn't record a post game synopsis or video. I was Trayvon Diggs level mad after the game. Now I didn't have anybody to take it out on like he did with Mike Leslie, but I was that wouldn't have been good content. There's a threshold where it's good rant wise, but I wasn't able to, and I wasn't even. It's not even like I was drinking or anything. I was stone sober on Sunday night, but it was just one of those things where, for mental health reasons, I needed to wait to have this conversation with Austin. So, Austin, how you doing this morning?
Good, man. Sun rose up this morning. So did we. So any day that happens is a day to be thankful, and
Amen.
we're good. Life is good. Life is still good.
Amen. And it's just football, right? It's just our stupid little football team. And at the end of the day, like you said, we're still gonna be here. We're still blessed, still moving forward. So all is well. And if you're watching, please hit the like button, subscribe the whole bit. Some of you guys were able to see Austin's thoughts on TikTok and other layers of social media. So if you're new from some of those realms, welcome. Hopefully we live up to your expectations. Now, in terms of the game on Sunday, I will say having an opportunity with the ball to go and win a game, that's not garbage time per se. I mean, at that point, you have a chance to win the game, right? I don't care how they got there. So that does show some fight. Shout out to DeMarvion Overshown, that sack he had on Brock Purdy. I think the fastest sack in the NFL this year. And some of the guys that stepped up defensively, I mean, kudos, right? All things considered. Mike Zimmer, who I thought had a reasonably sound game plan. My issue is more personnel with him than it was game plan. So there's some good takeaways, I think, from that game, despite the 30-24 loss. Now you're sitting here, you're 3-4. You're teetering in the division, keeping up with folks. The Eagles and the Commanders seem to have gotten some momentum. You have the Falcons next week going to Atlanta. Austin, coming off of that 49ers game, what are your takeaways? Where's your head at with all of this?
Yeah, I think 3-4 is not where you want to be, especially with Philadelphia and Washington playing as good as they are. That division lead just seems to get further and further away from you. But we sit here, on Halloween, and you want to think the season's over, but you look at the NFL schedule with how long it is. It's really not over. It's not even halfway over. Or I guess it is. We're at the halfway point, but
But
barely.
because of the bye, we've only played 7 games, so we still
Right.
have 10. Yeah.
Right. So you're exactly. So we're not even halfway there yet, and that seems kind of exhausting and daunting as a Cowboy fan right now. Like we have 10 more weeks of this. But if you're going to keep all things fair, your season is not lost. However, we're going to have to get a lot better in a lot of ways. And my quick recap on the game, again, we don't have to harp on it. You gave yourself a chance to win there in the end. And again, but I just, it's kind of what I alluded to last week. You have 4 plays on a potential game-winning drive, and we know Dak Prescott can lead a game-winning drive, but you don't get a yard. And I think that just kind of encapsulates the season. I was talking about it with a buddy the other day, and it's almost like you put almost any other NFL team in that situation, they're going to go ahead, and they might get walked off, with however much time is left on the clock. But I think I texted you. I just said very Cowboys, like when we lost that game, because that was just such a Cowboy way to lose. Now we can get into the X's and O's and all that stuff, and I'm sure we will soon. But recap of the game. It's a stinger. It's a game that you were in up until the very end, despite playing pretty poorly. I texted you again, that Dak Prescott, Quinn Ewers kind of meme, Spider-Man pointing at each other. It's like they're the same player essentially with the turnovers and stuff. But no, I mean, recap, loss stings, a beat up Niners team that really just out executed you on the ground. And that was kind of the story of the game.
Yeah, we'll get to the ground stuff because, Rico Dowdle was all of a sudden not able to perform because he was sick.
Yeah.
Now, it did come out yesterday that he had a 102 fever, which sounds like it sounds. I don't know how you want to put that when we clearly saw him out there signing autographs with fans
Smiling.
pregame,
Happy guy.
smiling. All of a sudden, got his dreads back after they were cut off. I don't know how he did that. How he got the locks back. There's a lot going on that seems suspicious. Now, Dalvin Cook gets in there, 6 carries, 12 yards, one catch, 10 yards, and boom, he's back to the practice squad. Very cowboyish, right? Uh, your run game, every metric we discussed last week is still bad. We're still 32nd. Nothing improved off the bye week. No changes in terms of the productivity. We still don't have an explosive rush, to your point. Longest carry of the season is still Rico, I think, at 13 yards. So that makes it impossible. And I saw Jeff Saturday talking about this on Get Up. When your run game is that bad, he was like, it makes it literally impossible for you to really get honest looks in the passing game on a regular basis because the field is going to be that lopsided for you defensively when no one thinks you can run the football. And I think I saw another statistic that all of the rushes that Zeke had, well, he had some effective runs, were all against very light boxes. So people are really playing pass coverage and getting really nuanced against you because there's no element of run. There's no element, and when there's no element of run, there's no element of play action, which is supposed to be something that is a big part of this offense. Also, should be able to help Dak in terms of pass rush. Right, we face all these good edges. Faced Bosa last week. We faced Myles Garrett earlier this season. We faced T.J. Watt. When there's no thought of run, I think it's made this offense very daunting. And I know Dak is the turnovers got to be better. I get it. Like at some point, you just got to take what they give you. I don't think there's anything wrong with Dak per se. I think he's a competitive person who's in an impossible situation trying to force things. That's honestly what I see because whenever he's had a run game, whenever there's been more balance offensively and we look like we're ahead scheme wise, he has been as good as taking care of the football as anybody in the history of this game. So this is not to say it's uncharacteristic because I know he's had problems with turnovers before back in 2021 or 2022, but the manner of these, like the first go ball to Turpin, it's kind of like, bro, you either got to eat that sack or throw it away. Like you're getting hit, and I get it. Bosa's in your lap. That's one. The ball where he's forcing it to CeeDee Lamb on the sideline, it's just really nothing there for you unless you kind of wait a little bit for Brooks. But like, what is there for you? You know what I mean? And how often is he looking down the field and he's seeing that? What's there? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and not to cut you off, are we allowed to feel bad for Mike McCarthy? Like, is that allowed? Can I feel bad for Mike
Go ahead.
McCarthy?
No, go ahead.
Because I feel like he's truly handicapped as a play caller, just with personnel and with who is the overarching theme in all this. The man of the hour in last week's video, but San Francisco wasn't concerned with play action because they knew they could bottle up the run, and we can't run. They can't pass protect, and now you have to keep Ferguson in to chip on the way out, right? That
Which
affects
impacts what he can do down
right.
the field,
So
right?
that affects all the routes running behind him. You get the tight end in the pass pattern. He pulls coverage. So your in routes, your hook routes, those things start to open up. But now you have backers that are just dropping into zone in their area and not really worrying about anything. And everybody kind of wants to point to that second half of the Pittsburgh game. I've seen that a lot this week. It was two different teams and we were picking them apart and we controlled the line of scrimmage and whatever. But it's a week to week league, right? Like just because you play, look at the Cleveland Browns against the Baltimore Ravens. Like they were 99% on the pick'em chart or something. I mean, we said it last week. The margin for error in this game between winning and losing a game, you can see the 32nd ranked team beat the number one team, and we see it almost every year, right? Pound for pound, I would take Baltimore all day over Cleveland. But what happened on that day? On that day, right, the margin for error was that much. But again, back to my original point with McCarthy, I feel bad for him one personnel wise, two as a play caller, because you have zero threat of running. And you and I know I'm not the biggest fan of the auto draw play on 1st and 10. But if you don't do it, it's going to be the quickest 3 and out that you could imagine. Like, you're looking at 12 seconds off the play clock, or off the game clock, excuse me, and you're punting again. And that just makes everybody upset on the sideline. So again, the X's and O's stuff, I mean, I know he can call plays. He can call plays. But with this personnel group, with who is overarching above him, it is a real, I don't want to say impossible, but it is a really, really difficult job to have extended success beyond, week to week.
I mean, let's diagram, and we're only going to do one play, but let's diagram the first down play on that comeback. When we got the ball back,
Yep.
we have Turpin. We had basically had a 3-man route, right?
Mhm.
Because the two people underneath are chipping and then releasing right into the intermediate area, not even the intermediate, the short area. So you have Turpin running off like a real deep post. Then you have CeeDee Lamb essentially running the dig on the inside. And then you have Tolbert on the other side running off coverage as well. So it's really CeeDee Lamb is the one and only person, because everybody else are just running off things.
And
And
you think Fred Warner knew that?
also, Fred Warner can guard now everything, because those two routes of Ferguson and I think it was Zeke in there, he can guard them too, because they're standing right in front of him and they're both together. So we're not even maximizing the space horizontally, right? To at least say, you know what, I'm going to run somebody to the sideline and have Fred at least vacate space in the middle. Fred staying in the middle, guarding them, but also being able to hedge in between CD while CD is being double covered. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And we'll have that on the screen for you guys in terms of what that concept looked like. Not even like just to show you what they have to work with, right? And it's frustrating for everybody involved. It's frustrating they won't make moves. We've talked about that last week. Go see that video. We're not going to rehash that. At this point, how do you try to move the ball? I mean, is it one of those things where it's just going to open things up a little bit more? I mean, you're playing an Atlanta team that's not as great against the pass.
They can't rush the passer.
And they struggle rushing the passer. So you will have some more opportunity than some of the personnel that the 49ers presented. I feel like at this point, it's just kind of matchups, like you said, by week. And then if something gets hot or guys improve, that's all we can hope for, individual personnel at this point.
Yeah, and I'm going to take our listeners back when we broke up essentially with Kellen Moore as our play caller. What did this team like hammer over? Not only Mike McCarthy, but we heard it from Steven in training camp. We're going to run the dang football. Like, that was our identity, right? That was like what the bread and butter was going to be, and it might as well be a play on words, because they can't run the dang football. But as far as salvaging it, I look at this O-line. It starts up front. And I know that's the biggest football cliche of all time, but it does. I think Cooper Beebe is going to get better. You have to pray that Terrence Steele returns to form, whatever that form is. We have seen him play good football. You hope Guyton gets better with experience, and that's really just where they're at. Like you said, Atlanta can't rush the passer. That's a little bit of a breath of relief. But yeah, preseason, I thought they'd run the ball a little bit better. If you could rewind to July, I wouldn't say, with confidence, we're going to be a top 10 rushing offense, but 32nd, I would have probably called you crazy. But yeah, I don't know. It's the mumbo jumbo of running back carousel with, the 102-degree fluke fever, because like I said, I've had a 102 fever. I'm sure you have as well. I don't feel like signing autographs and smiling and taking pictures with people. So I don't know. I think you just got healthy scratched, like we see, our Dallas Stars right down the street. Those guys, they get healthy scratched, right? And I think that's what Rico Dowdle did. But as far as salvaging the season, it's just week to week. It's so hard for me, even as a observant fan, to look past Atlanta, because you beat Atlanta, you're 4-4. You're in the thick of it for a wild card spot, and you're really not even dead in the division yet, because you haven't played Philly, you haven't played Washington, you have one more with New York, right? But again, that's difficult to say with confidence. the outlook on the rest of the year, because I really can't see past Atlanta. Now, 3-5 is a lot different than 4-4, right?
Agree. It's a week to week league. I mean, I think that's the theme of what we're saying here and how we have to approach this as Cowboys fans. We're not good enough to know, hey, this next stretch of games, blah blah blah. Like at this point, every week is just staying alive in the season and trying to get marginally better week over week and hopefully healthier, right? I mean, Deron Bland, it sounds like he's going to be coming back. So, as guys start to come back on, especially the defensive side, and hopefully now they're a little bit more connected, that's a positive, right? Eventually you'll get Micah back. Eventually you'll get DeMarcus Lawrence back. If DeMarvia and Overshown can continue to play like he's playing, if they can figure out what to do with the safeties. I know Donovan Wilson's getting a lot of heat as he should. Just didn't have competitive reps against George Kittle. And you have personnel like Wanye Thomas on the bench and Marquise Bell, who guys you're like, hey, they've competed, they've played, what their strengths are. And maybe Zim is still figuring that out, but there's options there, at least defensively, to get better, because one thing we're not getting anymore is turnovers. That's why the turnover margin is so crazy as well, right? I mean, as bad as we are at taking care of the football recently, at least we were getting, 2 or 3 here and there. And I think the only one we really had an opportunity for was the Chauncey Golston drop late in the game, which you need those,
What a gift.
right? But we're not generating the turnovers like you'd like to see. So I think the defense can there's some real uptick there. Offensively, I'm with you. I think it's just going to be week to week. And if Dak plays well and CD's they're on their Superman stuff and able to manual out of this, great. Here's where I'm at with the offensive line, and just I want to say this in general. No Cowboy team in my lifetime has ever been good without being outstanding in the run game. I talked last week about identities of franchises, which I truly believe in. I truly believe, when you think about Green Bay Packers, when they're good, they have a good quarterback. I mean, they've been the gurus of quarterback development, doing it the right way, molding guys, being patient, and development. When you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, you think of defense, right? Toughness, line of scrimmage, gritty teams. Whenever I've thought of Dallas at their peak, it's Emmitt Smith. It's the run game. It's the offensive line. Like the year Dak's rookie year, Tony Romo's 2014 team with DeMarco Murray. Those great Cowboy teams, whether they won or not, even in the 80s, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? You had Tony Dorsett. They always had a run game. And I think Jerry and this team, that's the only thing I'm going to throw out Jerry today, is you have to figure out how to get back to that should be the identity of the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, no matter what, we should have offensive line and a back and a special back. Like that's what I grew up with. And right now we are on the opposite end of that spectrum, trying to figure this thing out with a quarterback and a receiver and a dream. So as you look at Atlanta, what are your thoughts in terms of, because they're a good football team.
Yeah.
They're not bad. I mean, I know we talked about them rushing the passer and everything, but they've won. They beat Tampa Bay last week. They're right there in their NFC South division hunt. I mean, how do we navigate this? Because I mean, they're favored as well to beat it.
They're tough, and we get to see a guy that we saw for a couple of years in Texas, and Bijan, who I think is probably the most dynamic back we've faced, truly dynamic in whatever sense of the word that means, and probably since Detroit. In my opinion, I think he's probably better than anybody on San Francisco's roster. Obviously, McCaffrey, he didn't play.
I'd say him and Jahmyr Gibbs are. Yeah.
But I mean, he's a guy that he just needs to get to the second level, and it could be a big game for him. Kirk Cousins is like third in the NFL in pass completion percentage. I mean, he's had a resurgence there, and they have a dynamic receiving core that gets open and catches the ball. I think they lead the league in caught receptions. I think they have the fewest amount of drops. But again, to your point about defensive turnovers, this is a game where I'm like, yeah, we're probably going to need to turn them over a couple times. it doesn't happen without Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. You don't get turnovers unless you have a pass rush, right? And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins can't throw the ill-advised ball that, falls right into somebody's hand or something like that. But for the most part, it just doesn't matter. I mean, that's going to be the big issue is forcing turnovers, and that's going to be extremely difficult.
What did you think about Zimmer's 6-man lines last week? I thought he was trying to get creative with at least saying, hey, this run stuff, you're not going to run the ball down my throat like a people. And I thought they did, until Garendo got in there, obviously, and started getting to the second level. But he's trying to get creative.
Yeah.
He decided he was going to blitz every shotgun snap. No
Right.
matter.
Well, with the personnel, I mean, 6 is greater than 5, right? You like your numbers there, and they don't like necessarily keeping Kittle in tight. And if they do, I rarely see him just block, next to left tackle. I mean, if anything, he's like a Ferguson. I say like a Ferguson, where he chips and tries to get out of there. But a lot of the time, they like him running those immediate digs, right? Those immediate seam routes. But 6-on-5 works, man. I didn't hate it. You even kind of saw him shift the double mug a couple times, where those, two backers are right on top of the center, which makes it extremely difficult, not only on the center, but the, guards to his right and his left. So I walked away like, okay, Mike Zimmer's trying to do something here, right?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
and I liked that, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. But what's worked, right? So we have to fix until you find, right? And that's kind of like an old coaching adage that I've heard, for years. If it's not working, you got to fix until you find it, right? So he's doing that week in and week out. And again, I just think I hate harping on just this personnel, but it's just not the defense as last year. And it's not the defense of the year before that, right? It's just this personnel group, with as banged up as they are, and guys, we can talk about maybe taking a few snaps off. I know the film doesn't lie. We can get there if you want to, but there is some questionable effort from some people on this defense where you look late in the game and it could be the difference in you getting the ball back or not. So we'll see.
I know one of those people that was called out, and he actually graded, they had a pretty good game, was Trayvon Diggs. He had the run. I think here's the good message, the good news for this week. It felt like rock bottom, but then again, I don't know if rock bottom even exists for the Cowboys, because it's just there's a new low every time. But when when we've seen Trayvon Diggs blow up on Mike Leslie in the media, and he says D's nuts and all this type of stuff, and it's just like, all right, we're officially that team this year, right? To see their interaction yesterday, and to make up, and to say, as both as men, hey, we're sorry. Emotions, Mike said, hey, I honestly didn't know you were slow playing it for the cutback. Trayvon said, I shouldn't have ever addressed you and talked to you like that out of pocket, and to shake hands and say, hey, we're moving forward. I feel like that's actually a good positive vibes, just for whether they win or lose or whatever. I mean, you can't get to the point of unprofessionalism, and losing yourself. That's my message to all these guys, even Dak. Like, don't lose yourself in this football team. The last thing I wanted to hit on before we bounce, Dak's legs. So a lot of people have talked about, why is he not running the football? All these things, right? Like, there seems to be yards there. He can't do some of the stuff that Brock Purdy did and just take a couple yards here and there. Do you think, now that Jerry has made it clear, hey, I don't want my $60 million quarterback running, and be smart about it. And I actually agree with a lot of, believe it or not, what he said. However, the man had one of the most catastrophic leg injuries I've ever seen. I don't know how much natural ability he still has. I know he had some runs last year when he needed them, and I think you got to keep him honest. Like, getting back to the zone read fakes. I was watching Russell Wilson and the Steelers, and Russell Wilson still carries out his fake every single time. So those are things you can do to help. But where do you fall in the Dak's legs discussion, in terms of how it would help the offense?
I think it would help. Anytime you have a quarterback that can run, you start playing 11 on 10 football, right? It just takes another element of the defense to account for, right? Like, you can as a defensive coordinator, you can match up your numbers. Okay, we have this, they have this. But when you add that quarterback, that's another number, right? And we all know football is a numbers game. What you don't want to have happen is a guy that, like you said, on your zone reads, there's not even a threat, right? That defensive end just crashes down immediately because he knows there's no way this guy's pulling this ball. I see that with my Oklahoma State Cowboys and Alan Bowman running the zone read almost every week, right? There's zero threat of the run game. So out of that. So I think you have to keep them honest. And again, am I going to sit here and say Dak is Kyler Murray level, Justin Fields level, Russell Wilson level mobile? No, I'm not. He even has a little bit of escapability. I appreciated that from him last week. There were a couple plays where he could have self-sacked and just, I'm going to go down on this one, but he, fought a little bit, live to fight another day. You have to keep him honest. And with the slide rule now in the NFL, they're so touchy-feely on that. You kind of give yourself a chance to have a really big reward without him getting hurt. Like, here's what I mean by that. Let's say it's just QB draw, right? They're in a dime formation. They got one backer in the middle. It's draw. We're bringing in a tight end. You're going to get 6-7 yards. You're going to slide. If somebody even remotely touches him, it's 15, right? Like, that is literally, I think, a thought in a play caller's mind that, hey, we know we can get probably 5 to 6 out of this, but we probably got a 50% chance that if somebody hits him at all, that's a 20-yard play, right? And that's smart football. It's also complementary football when your defense has been on the field more often than the offense has as of late. But you have to keep it in there. And I'm not saying run it 7 times in a row, but you have to keep it in there because, Dak is not capable this season with the personnel they have to be a statue back there and just distribute the ball. You get a catch, you get a catch, you get a catch. You can't do it with this year's personnel.
No. And just those little 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 5s. When you talk about Quinn Ewers, that's one where they are very much in play. It's like, hey man, just scoot forward and take those 5, or let's keep the chains moving type stuff, right? Mahomes does it all the time. Other guys, we'll see. I'm willing to bet the over whatever Dak's rushing yards are estimated at this week for Atlanta, and maybe even a touch. It just seems anytime they start talking about something like this, the next game they'll actually like give you a little taste or sneak hint at it. We'll see. I think that they beat Atlanta. I don't know why. I don't have a good reason. I think that they beat Atlanta and go to 4-4 because this is the team that likes to suck you back in. That's my reasoning. We'll see what happens. I don't know if you want to give a prediction for the game, but I don't have a score or anything. I just think that they somehow win the game and they suck us back in as we get ready for Philly.
I'm not quite ready yet. I might talk myself into it or have you talk me into it before Sunday at noon. Right now, my gut says no, just because I think Kirk Cousins is that good of a passer,
Yes.
and can take advantage of what the defense gives him.
And we don't have anybody to guard Kyle Pitts.
No, well, I think their offense is too dynamic. Let's just throw this out there. Blind personnel test, San Francisco, Atlanta, right now. Who you taking?
True.
It's not close, right? And I don't know if maybe got what they wanted on the ground might be a little greedy, but they kind of got what they wanted. And I think Atlanta runs it better than they do. So right now I'm going to stick in Atlanta, probably by a touchdown, maybe.
Okay. Well, we'll be back next week to discuss. I will make a post-game video this week. I'm not going to allow myself to get that riled up. Austin, you'll be back with me to talk hoops tomorrow as we do some of our season preview for college basketball. Very excited for that conversation. Definitely a little bit more upbeat. But hey, we had to talk boys this week. So you guys tap in, hit the like button, subscribe, the whole bit. Austin, I appreciate your time as always, my friend. Thank you for joining. Peace.
Absolutely.